This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And welcome, everybody, to Kentucky's Voice, your homegrown Christian conservative talk radio show covering important issues affecting our local community, our state, and yes, our nation. I'm your host today, Bob Scott. It's Tuesday, April the 8th. We would absolutely love to hear from you, so please call or text us at 502-571-0970. Again, that phone number is 502-571-0970. Well, the college basketball season wrapped up last night with a nail-biter as the Florida Gators won their third national championship over the Houston Cougars, 65-63. Congratulations to both teams for an absolutely tremendous game. You know, I was just happy it wasn't Duke, and I'll leave it right at that. I'm sure this is something that both Louisville and UK fan bases can agree on, for sure. And we know that the local state teams, speaking of Louisville and UK, are already hard at work preparing for a national championship run for next year. Folks, today's show is going to be a little bit different than what we normally do. In fact, I want right now for you to call a friend and invite them to tune in. I have a very, very special guest that's going to be on the program today. I'll talk more about him in a second. I do have a short clip that I want to play that my special guest shared on his recent podcast. He talks about a life-altering moment that he had 10 years ago that led him to where he is at today. I will tell you that this soundbite is raw, completely honest, and actually moved me to tears. Gary, if you would please play that clip.
You know, people have asked me a lot, why so much emphasis on storytelling? Why do you keep bringing that up? Why do you spend so much time doing that? And the answer to that question started with me standing in a closet holding a pistol underneath my chin in 2015. I had been out of the Army for not even 2 years. And that was the darkest time of my life, hands down. Standing in that closet in that moment, because I was petrified to go through with it, cussing myself out for not just moving through it and getting it done. And I was petrified to walk out of the closet and live because I didn't know how to.
And that, of course, ladies and gentlemen, was the voice of my very, very special guest today, who has served as a warrior in battlefields in Afghanistan, Iraq, and I believe even Colombia as a Green Beret, and is the nationally known author of numerous books, including his most recent book, Nobody is Coming to Save You. He is also a frequent guest on many national radio and TV shows, such as The Sean Ryan Show, who he is good friends with, and Fox News, where he shares his unique insights into national security, the military, and life in general. And I will say this, yes, I am a certified fanboy. Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, author, and podcaster, Scott Mann.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me on, buddy. Appreciate that. Very humbling.
Well, it's an honor, Scott. You really pretty much have had life experiences, and like I can honestly say most of us have not. And, I didn't honestly know about what led you to really go in the direction that you have gone in. And we'll talk all about that here in a second. But it really is humbling for me, to have you on the program, to be able to share your perspective as to, things that are going on in the world and, what brought you to the point. But you really certainly have made the most of your last 10 years. And just tell me, and our listeners, a little bit about that. There may be some out there that don't know who Scott Mann is. But if you do that, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, so thank you. I grew up in a little logging town in Mount Ida, Arkansas. Son of Rex and Anita Mann, and Dad was a forest ranger, and Mom was a teacher. And when I was about 14, met a Green Beret in our soda shop in that little town that didn't even have a stoplight. And his name was Mark, and this guy had such an impact on me that at 14, that I decided to follow in his footsteps and do what he did. I spent about 23 years in the Army, just under that, and around 18 years as a Green Beret, working by, with, and through indigenous communities all over the world to basically stand up and fight back against oppression from the bottom up, and most of that time was in Afghanistan, and then I came home from the military in 2013. I retired after a couple of decades and had a very, as you played on the clip, a very, very challenging transition from the military, from what I had, gauged, retiring on my terms, a life of high performance, doing what I really wanted to do and loved to do and dreamed to do as a kid, to coming home to a country I really didn't recognize, that was so divided and almost at war with itself, and then at war with my own self, just really loss of purpose and identity, and it really just took me to a dark place. So it was in that space that I think reconnected with the power of storytelling as a modality for healing and as a way of bridging gaps, and really just, it saved my life, honestly. It started with me telling the stories of my guys to just make sense of things that didn't make sense, and then ultimately teaching other people how to do that to help themselves.
Yeah, and you really have become I guess, almost like a poet laureate as far as getting around and talking to lots of groups. Surprised to hear that you're doing a lot of stuff with corporations, as well. And I did see recently where you were honored in the state of Florida, and you've got a project going on down there right now. And could you tell us a little bit about it?
Well, yeah, I think what I would start with is that, people are surprised, I think, sometimes to hear that, a Green Beret, for example, is standing up in front of, commercial bankers or tech sector folks and talking about the power of your personal story and sharing, repurposing your struggles through narratives in the service of the people you lead. And it is odd. But in reality, if you stop and think about it, first of all, that's actually what warfighters have done for thousands of years. We have used storytelling not only as a way of reintegrating our warfighters back into the tribe, but warfighters have, all the way back to Shakespeare, have used storytelling as a way to parlay those hard, terrible, and oftentimes beautiful lessons from the crucible of war into the modern world that they return to. And, for me, just studying some of the more prolific storytellers, living and dead, it just inspired me that, that really is, for the rest of my days, where I want to live. And the other thing I would say, Bob, is, in my book, Nobody's Coming to Save You, I talk about the churn of division and disconnection and distraction that we faced as Green Berets in Afghanistan, in other places. And to me, that same churn is now present in our country. Our country, in many ways, is at war with itself. We are divided. We're more distracted. We're more disengaged. And frankly, I think we're more distrustful of one another than we've been in our history. And so I find that corporations and technologies, bureaucracies, in many ways are sick, and they need this kind of communication training and teaching to maybe reclaim what's good about ourselves as individuals and collectives, and realize that we've got a lot more in common than we do apart.
Amen. And well said, Scott. In fact, you're listening to Kentucky's Voice. We will be right back with Scott Mann. In fact, I have a question for Scott. Several questions I want to ask him when we come back. Stay tuned.
Need work on your heating or air conditioning? Go with Christian-owned and operated Divine Services. Serving Metro Louisville and the Tri-County area and servicing every make and model. Divine Services features Tempstar heating and cooling products to replace your old worn-out unit. Tempstar high-efficiency heating and cooling products. Quality you can feel. Online at DivineServicesLLC.com. Call Divine anytime at 502-712-1979. That's 712-1979.
Hey Cardinal fans, United Mechanical is thrilled to sponsor this season of Louisville Cardinals basketball on the Mike Rutherford Show. From HVAC to electrical, plumbing, and refrigeration, United Mechanical is your winning choice for reliable commercial and industrial services. Call 502-339-1133. That's 502-339-1133. Listen to the Mike Rutherford Show Monday through Friday, 3 to 6 on Big X Sports Radio 96.1 and 1450. Let's go Cards.
Cards fans, the fall is just around the corner, and Louisville football can't wait to have you back for another exciting season. For the first time in 17 years, there are 8 home games on the schedule, including 2 marquee matchups against Clemson and UK. On May 10th, you can speak directly with Louisville Athletic ticket reps and select from the best available season ticket inventory at L&N Stadium. RSVP for the 2025 L&N Stadium Select a Seat event at gocards.com/FB Select a Seat.
Got a big gathering? Feed a crowd the easy way with City Barbecue Catering and the best barbecue in town. Freshly smoked daily at our 2 locations. Our original off Whittington Parkway in Hurstbourne and now on Poplar Level Road near Kroger. From a company picnic to a wedding, our catering pros will deliver beef brisket, pulled pork, pulled chicken, ribs, or even smoked turkey breast. Dine in or carry out. Order online at citybbq.com or download our free app with City Rewards. You get $5 off your first order. Coming Good Friday, April 18th to Slugger Field, it's Easter over Louisville. Organized by 88.5 WJIE. With Kentucky's largest Easter egg hunt, live worship music with many local artists, a reenactment of the Easter story, and family-friendly activities, giveaways, and community booths. Easter over Louisville is a mission to engage, to inspire, and uplift the community. Calling on local businesses and volunteers to join in, making history, to inspire citywide Easter Sunday attendance by encouraging local congregations to participate. Volunteers are welcome. Local churches, businesses, and corporate sponsors are wanted to help bring this big event to life. Learn how now by visiting EasterOverLouisville.org. Join thousands of other families of believers April 18th at Slugger Field together in this one event, a powerful celebration of hope, unity, and faith. It's Easter over Louisville. Admission is free, but you do need to register at EasterOverLouisville.org. Bring the whole family. That's EasterOverLouisville.org. What can a ceramic coating from A&K Auto Detailing do for your vehicle? It's the best protection on the market today, up to 5 years worth. Producing a showroom new gloss to your car's paint, making it easy to clean and stay clean longer and resist harmful UV rays. Classic car owners know all about ceramic coatings. They use them to protect their investments and retain value. The high-quality ceramic coating you'll get with A&K bonds with your car's paint, making it stronger and lower maintenance, making scratches or other surface damage much harder to see. And A&K Auto Detailing provides a decontamination ceramic hand wash to maintain a previous coating too. With the high price of vehicles, it only makes sense to protect them the best way available. With a ceramic coating from A&K on Shelbyville Road in St. Matthews. Serving Louisville for over 30 years at ankdetailing.com. Call 502-899-1799 and also ask about all the amazing professional services offered by the experienced technicians at A&K Auto Detailing. Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org. To be a part of the program, call or text your comment to 502-571-0970.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm Bob Scott, and my special guest today is retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and author, podcast host, a little bit of jack of all trades, Scott Mann. And Scott, again, it's just an honor and a pleasure to have you on the program today. I got to ask you a question. You may or may not have heard this, but there is several reports circulating, rumors on the internet today that the United States, at the invitation, believe it or not, of the Taliban, is allegedly being asked to come back and reestablish a presence in Afghanistan at Bagram airfield. Knowing that you had served there, and we're going to talk about your Operation Pineapple Express here in a second, I found that a bit surprising, but there are several, and mainly international sources that are reporting this, and I just wanted to get your feedback on that, if that's something you had heard.
I've seen social media posts of it, Bob, on LinkedIn. There's a part of me, honestly, that's not surprised by this.
Okay.
I believe that. I don't say I'm necessarily in favor of it or proud of it, and I don't know that it's true or not. I have been kind of led to believe by members of the administration and things that they've said that they are not going to normalize relations with the Taliban. This seems very much like normalization to me.
Right.
Right. If that were to be the case, it would probably be, and here's my take on it. This is Scott Mann's take on this, and I don't think I'm alone in this, is that there is a narrative out there that the Taliban are the sworn enemies of the Islamic State or ISIS-KP, Islamic State Khorasan Province, which is Islamic State in Afghanistan, that they are sworn enemies, and that the Taliban is actively campaigning and fighting against ISKP, thereby is a counterterrorism partner for the United States, and that ISKP really poses the threat to the country, not the Taliban. I disagree with that. A lot of global war on terror veterans disagree with that. I believe we are being duped and being shown what we want to see, and that these organizations are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. I would tend to go with your opinion on that too, because, and again, that's something, we know with President Trump, obviously, and I'm sure you've heard, the stock market, after basically crashing yesterday, is up 1,000 points today as more and more countries are coming over to his tariff that he's threatening and really is doing. So we do know with the president, and I will say this, I said it before, thank God we have Donald J. Trump as our president as opposed to Kamala Harris. Thank God, but he is unpredictable, so I just, again, thank you for giving a good answer on that.
And he is a deal maker, and I don't disagree with you that from a national security perspective, all perspective, I think he is far and away the better choice, and I've been clear about that. I'm apolitical in how I address the issues in my life. However, I do,
as is most military people, Scott.
Yeah, I've had to be, and I think it's useful to have people like me in the nation who really try to just look at the issues and don't get too wrapped around the rigidity of the party or that kind of thing. And because I think at our core, that's how we live as humans, right? In our communities,
that's right.
In our neighborhoods, we don't typically sit around in day to day and engage in partisan rhetoric, although it does seem to be more pervasive today. But where I'm going with this is Trump is a deal maker. He always has been a deal maker. He always will be a deal maker. And so I would not be surprised if his inner circle made a deal with the Taliban that gave them access and placement at Bagram to do counterterrorism operations against ISKP. That would not surprise me. It would disappoint me, but it would not surprise me.
Yeah, and I know that, obviously you were very involved with, Operation Pineapple Express, and you have been, honestly, the tip of the spear person, basically trying to save, well over 1,000 Afghan allies, after the disastrous 2021 withdrawal. Tell our listeners a little bit about that and how that's coming along.
Well, so that was when the country collapsed under the Taliban's onslaught in August of 2021. A handful of us formed a group called Task Force Pineapple. I want to be really clear. There was nothing truly unique in what we did in the sense that a whole bunch of veterans did the same thing with different groups like Moral Compass and Sacred Promise and Save Our Allies. And so our group was called Task Force Pineapple. I think what is unique is that we really told the story with the American people about what we did, maybe in ways that others did not. It started with us trying to get out my friend Nizam, who was an Afghan commando, stuck behind enemy lines, so to speak, and he and I had served together for several years, and he was a dead man walking. Like, there was no way out for him, and so we basically used our relationships and our cell phones to build a network that would help get him out and get him through the crowd at Kabul International Airport and on an airplane and on to the United States. And what that set in motion, Bob, was basically we decided to scale that. We scaled that up, and we just started leveraging relationships and created a network of about 120 veterans in the now all too famous Signal Room
right.
to basically collaborate and move these men and women. And by the time it was all said and done, somewhere between 750 and 1,000 Afghan commandos and their families were moved through an open sewage canal and a 4-foot hole in the fence, and then on to Europe and the United States.
Yeah, and you know, the amazing thing about this, Scott, is you and all the others involved, for the most part, did it out of your own pocketbook, and none of you and your cohorts would be what I would call millionaires by any stretch of the imagination, but you did this because these were your brothers in arms, you know, and it didn't matter that they were someone from a different fighting force, but many times you guys have been in life and death situations with them, and they saved you, you saved them. It's just an amazing thing to me, and it's difficult for me to understand. I have a son that's now a second lieutenant, newly minted second lieutenant in the Air Force.
Right, right.
But I never served, you know, and it's hard for me to understand that. But I can tell you, looking at it from afar, I 1,000% appreciate that.
Thank you. I think a lot of Americans have and did appreciate that story, because I think it's uniquely American, right? I mean, American veterans have a history throughout our history of jumping into the fray when they've returned home to do things that maybe the institutions failed to do. And I think this was just another example of that. But I think it really resonated with a lot of Americans. What we called the Pineapple Express or Task Force Pineapple really resonated with Americans in the everyday who saw that and they thought, okay, you know, nobody was coming from the government, and these veterans jumped in, and they did the best they could to solve an Uncle Sam-sized problem with their retirement funds, as my friend Duke says. And we didn't, you know, we got 1,000 out maybe, but we left a lot more behind. But that's really not the point. I think the bigger point is that, you know, these veterans represented what a lot of Americans believe, which is bottom-up, grassroots action is really the best hope for this country.
Yeah, and you know, that's a very good point. That is the heart of America. I mean, it really is. We have seen that time and time and time again down through the years where America and Americans are not afraid to step to the front when you know the situation demands. I've seen it most recently, I know, in these storms that have happened in the South and now even in our own state that's being hit very, very hard right now with flooding. And there's a lot of Kentuckians and Americans from outside of Kentucky that are stepping in to fill the void and help out. Listen, you're listening to Kentucky's Voice. I'm going to be right back with my special guest, Army Lieutenant Colonel and author Scott Mann. Have some more questions that definitely want to be asking. If you want to join the show, please call in.
With SRN News, I'm Rich Thomason in Washington. A 29-year-old California man has pleaded guilty to trying to kill U.S. Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh at his suburban Washington, D.C. home several years ago. The Trump administration celebrating a legal victory at the nation's highest court. At issue, the administration's use of an 18th century wartime law to deport illegal aliens. Tough talk from China vowing to fight to the end after President Trump threatened an additional 50% tariff on Chinese imports. President Trump says China has been a leader among countries taking advantage of the U.S. through tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers. Wall Street is off of its highs for the day, but the benchmark still sharply higher following the recent massive sell-offs. Right now, the Dow is up 771 points. The Nasdaq ahead 406 points. More details, srnnews.com.
You want to give your dogs the very best. You take them on walks and pick the best food. No matter what they're eating, you should add Dr. Fido's to every bite. Just sit back and watch them lick their bowl clean, knowing they are getting 40 carefully selected ingredients made from whole foods, spices, and fibers, from bananas to sweet potatoes. Go to drfidos.com today and subscribe to save $20 each month. Vet developed, dog trusted. This is the human-grade dog food topper that gives you peace of mind. Don't just take our word for it.
I have used it on 2 dogs, Kipper and Coda, but I just started giving Kipper tons of Dr. Fido's product. He actually started eating all of his food. Like, I actually had to give him more. The product has been very successful for both dogs.
Every dog deserves a topper worth barking about. Go to drfidos.com. That's DRPHYTOS.
When the cards to the court, they bring strength, skill, and precision. So does United Mechanical. From HVAC to electrical, plumbing, and refrigeration, they've got the expertise that Kentuckiana commercial and industrial businesses rely on. Get on board with the home team this season. Get on board with United Mechanical. Call them today at 502-339-1133. That's 502-339-1133. Let's go Cardinals.
The Business and Ministry Conference is a premier one-day event designed to unite Christian professionals and business owners in meaningful connections and strategic collaboration. The keynote speaker will be Chuck Proudfit from the At Work on Purpose Ministry in Cincinnati, Ohio. Make plans now to attend this exciting event taking place on Tuesday, April 15th at the Jeffersonian in J-Town. Register today at businessministryinitiatives.org.
Are you worried you may outlive your retirement funds? At Rich Wealth Management, we turn your hard-earned savings into a steady, reliable income source. We're online at richwealthmanagement.com, or feel free to give us a call 24 hours, 844-797-4359. That's 844-979-4359. And listen to Rich Wealth Radio with Dwight Rich right here Saturdays at noon.
Bright blue skies and chilly sunshine for the rest of your Tuesday. Many of you stay in the 40s this afternoon. We may briefly touch 50 here in Louisville, but that's about it. Get ready for another night below freezing. A freeze warning in place once more tonight. Make sure you cover up those sensitive plants and vegetation with overnight lows hovering near 30 degrees. From the Wave Storm Tracking Team, I'm Carson Meredith.
This is Nathan, General Manager at your local AirServe. Call us now, or if it's working, call AirServe for a free peace of mind safety inspection and tune-up for only $69. Stay comfortable, stay AirServe.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org. To be a part of the program, call or text your comment to 502-571-0970.
And welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. I'm Bob Scott, and my special guest is retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and author Scott Mann. And Scott, we were talking about lots of things that are happening in the world today, and I have a soundbite from Elon Musk talking about terrorism in Europe, and I'd like to get your response to this.
I mean, you're clearly seeing a massive increase in the number of attacks in Italy and broadly in Europe. And the media, the legacy media, downplays these attacks. But the attacks, the terrorism, the killing of innocent people is rising. Every week there's more. And it's more and more. And eventually, I think we're going to see widespread slaughter in Europe. That is the trend. If you simply extrapolate the trend of what is the rate at which the terrorist attacks are occurring in Europe, and put those points, it's basically deadly attacks versus time on a graph, and extrapolate that graph, it leads to the slaughter of Europe.
Yeah, the slaughter of Europe. And I know that you and former CIA analyst Sarah Adams, who you're friends with, and I believe you've had her on your podcast as well, have been saying it's not a question of if, but when our homeland is going to be hit. You've been saying that for a while. How do you assess our situation today, under a Trump administration?
Yeah, so I've got a couple thoughts on that. I appreciate you bringing this up. I think Mr. Musk, his assessment on Europe is accurate. All you have to do is really just step back, as he's suggesting, and don't just look at the individual knifings and runnings over with cars. Like, look at holistically at the trends, and what you'll see are some really alarming things happening in Europe. I believe personally, as does Sarah, I think she would agree with me, as do quite a few other global war on terror veterans, that we are next. I think what's happening in Europe, what happened in Israel on October 7, is a harbinger of what the next attacks will look like from us. I don't believe the big, beautiful ocean, as President Trump has described, is as foreboding to these terror groups as we'd like to think. First of all, we've had an open border for 4 years. We have had a guy named Haqqani, who was the Minister of Interior in Afghanistan, who issued passports to foreign fighters for 4 years, and this was the father of suicide bombing, who has close relationships with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. So I think it's a foregone conclusion that not only are there deep cover operatives in Europe, they're also here. Sarah and I undertook a project, Bob, called The Gathering Storm. That is now a book. You can get it at tfpineapple.org, and all the proceeds go back into our nonprofit, Pineapple. But we lay out what Sarah and other analysts are saying is a competing picture to what our government is telling us about the threat. And then what I do are case studies. I look at the D.C. sniper, the October 7 attacks, Mumbai, other places like where people got hit, where they live and they work and they play, cafes, rock concerts, because that is the MO for terrorism today. It's not the World Trade Center. It's not the Pentagon. It's surgical, horrific attacks where we live, work, and play, and not necessarily New York City, smaller towns. This is what they want, is mass casualties and horrific paralysis that results in it. Look at October 7 as a really good model. And so what we're trying to get across to folks is we need to wake up to this, because it's a very uncomfortable reality that our schools perhaps could be targeted. Nursing homes, places where we are extremely vulnerable and where the bad guys have had more than 4 years to be amongst us and to case the premises. And we're not going to know it till we know it. Box cutters and airplanes seemed really silly on September 10, but they sure didn't on September 11, right?
That's right.
And so that's what we're trying to put forward. That's why we're putting this book out here, to help individuals and communities just responsibly think about what Elon is saying, because it's going to be communities and individuals, in my assessment, that are going to have to rise up to anything like that, because just like a hurricane or any other disaster, the government is quickly overwhelmed.
Yeah, and I've heard stories that they will actually, when they execute these attacks, they'll even disguise themselves as first responders, in the process, which obviously makes it more difficult to know who the good guys are and who the bad guys are, And that's not theory, Bob. That's not theory. I interviewed an IDF Special Forces operative who responded to October 7, and he validated, as did a range of other folks that I interviewed who responded to the October 7 attacks, including the Nova Music Festival, and they confirmed that these attackers were in first responder uniforms and at scale. Like, they did this. They attacked the first responder outposts, the municipal police stations and firehouses right out of the gate, and took them out. And so these are the things that we're in the Gathering Storm, is we're trying to get local, state leaders to think about. We're not trying to scare people, but what we're trying to get at is, look, if we're thinking about it, you put a group of global war on terror veterans together and you're going to get the sum of their fears. But if we're thinking about it, then we have a chance to get inside the enemy's decision cycle. And we can do that at state and local levels. I'll give you one more example. A very well-known SWAT trainer who trains tactics to law enforcement all over the country. He said to me, Scott,
right now, the most that we train on for active shooter is one shooter. And he goes, pretty much these guys, if they do what they've done in Mumbai, what they've done on October 7th, they could literally just jump in the stack with a bunch of SWAT operators and just start yelling blue, blue, blue and go right into the house with them and take them out from behind. And he goes, that's a universal problem. And he goes, if we don't start addressing these kinds of things at local levels, then they're going to have a competitive edge. And we just cannot wait for that to happen.
Well, what can first responders do? Because you're an expert on this, and so Sarah Adams. And I know you'd mentioned to me last time I had you on that I believe it was last summer. You had a group of ex-Special Force guys. I think they were mainly Green Berets, and you said there was about 1,000, I think, that were in attendance. And if you just tell that story, what happened, I mean, that really got my attention real quick.
Yeah. It was at the Special Forces annual conference, and I was speaking at that. There were probably about 700 Green Berets in the room, ranging from Vietnam all the way up to Iraq, Afghanistan, and most of them had fought in Iraq, Afghanistan, Al Qaeda, ISIS. They know this enemy very well. A lot of them have also helped our Afghan allies during the collapse, and so they're hearing a lot of the reporting that is coming from these allies who used to work for the government, but they don't trust our government anymore. So they're telling this information to SF guys and to SEALs. And so I asked them, I said, how many of you think an attack on the homeland, a local attack, like we saw on October 7, is imminent? And every hand in the room went up, 700 hands without hesitation.
Oh, wow.
These are some of the most hardened, knowledgeable, war fighters in our country. And, they're all saying collectively, yes, there's a very good chance this is going to happen. So my point is, as Global War on Terror veterans, we feel we have a duty to report what we've been hearing from our Afghan allies since we came to their aid in August of 2021 to the Trump administration, and we've been doing that. And then we have a duty to warn our individuals and communities, like the folks listening to your radio, that they should at least be thinking about these kinds of things at community levels, at family levels. And so this book, The Gathering Storm, that we've put out is just to help them do that. And so to your question about first responders, one of the most important things I think first responders can do is to look at scenarios like Mumbai, October 7, the D.C. sniper, the Bedouin school siege with the Chechens, the Crocus Music Hall recently with ISIS in Russia. Like, there are a range of case studies that we can start to look at as first responders, as emergency operation centers, and start asking ourselves, okay, if that happened in my town, my community, how would we harden about that? How would we work with the community on this? And start working it bottom up. Don't wait for permission. And this book that we've written is just replete with those case studies to be thinking about.
Yeah, that's absolutely great. In fact, if somebody wants to, I know you mentioned and gave some information on how to get that book and some of your other books. What's the best way to do that?
So if you want to get the Gathering Storm book, go to TF, that's Tango Foxtrot, pineapple.org, and you can get it right now. You can get it in Kindle. We're going to have the audio book soon. We're even going to have course workbooks for communities,
Wow.
That we're putting together. You can go there. And if you want the rest of my stuff, go to scottmann.com, 2 T's, 2 N's.
Yeah. A little easier for me to remember, scottmann.com, and it's MANN and SCOTT, as he mentioned. We'll be right back with our final segment with Scott Mann. If you'd like to join in the discussion, please give us a call.
This world that we're living in may seem chaotic at times. It's good to have a team like ours that has never strayed away from its core values: God, family, and serving others. It's been this way since the beginning. I'm Lee Downing with AirServe.
The Big X Sports Radio Golf Cards are back. The 2025 Big X Sports Radio Golf Card is by far the best deal in the game. With a Big X Sports Radio Golf Card, you can play Park Mammoth, Old Capitol, Elk Run Valley View, Wooded View, and Christmas Lake in Santa Claus, Indiana, for less than $25 a round. Supplies are limited, so get your golf card today at BigXSportsRadio.com or call 812-725-1457.
Your legacy is important, and Rich Wealth Management helps protect your assets, your goals, and your family's future. We're online at richwealthmanagement.com, or feel free to give us a call 24 hours, 844-797-4359. That's 844-979-4359. And listen to Rich Wealth Radio with Dwight Rich right here Saturdays at noon.
Success isn't always a measurement of personal achievement. It's often determined by the influence we have on others. The tallest mountain in the world, Mount Everest, is named after Sir George Everest, a geographer from the 1800s. But Sir George wasn't the first to summit the mountain. That was Sir Edmund Hillary in 1953. In fact, Sir George never even saw the mountain. The man who hiked the Himalayas to officially calculate the mountain's record-breaking height was Andrew Waugh. It was Waugh who suggested the mountain be named in honor of Sir George. Waugh believed it was his innovation, high standards, and influence on surveying that made mapping the Himalayas possible. And so, in 1865, Peak 15, as it was known at the time officially, became Mount Everest. If your daily life seems insignificant, expand your vision. You're influencing other people. If you're a parent, you're not just changing diapers or taxiing kids to soccer practice. You're shaping character. If you're married, you're not just paying the bills and doing laundry. You're encouraging each other forward through life. Even as a friend, a neighbor, and a coworker, you can spur others on to success. Recognize your influence. You may not directly impact millions of people yourself, but who knows? You just might influence someone who will. For more to help you thrive, go to focusonthefamily.com. I'm Jim Daly.
The words you are about to hear are taken from letters sent in by members of the Trinity Debt Management Program.
Dear Trinity, today I'm making my final credit card payment.
Before I came to you, I was in a constant state of anxiety and panic, but now there is hope for my family's financial future.
Working with Trinity made me understand that I'm not alone.
You really do help people.
Your kindness will never be forgotten.
Without Trinity's support, I would not have achieved my lifelong goal of becoming debt-free.
We saved a lot on interest and penalties, of course, but the reward was the gift of human kindness.
Trinity has carried me through a very difficult time in my life. You're amazing.
I used to feel so anxious and hopeless. Now I feel grace and peace.
God bless Trinity as you continue to help others become debt-free.
If credit card debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-990-6976. That's 1-800-990-6976.
We are a team that believes in our shared core values, God, family, and service. From the office professional who answers the phone to our service tech who brings the HVAC solutions to your doorstep. Stay warm, stay comfortable, stay air served.
Now, back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org. To be a part of the program, call or text your comment to 502-571-0970.
And welcome back for the final segment. This show always goes way too fast. Of Kentucky's Voice. My special guest today has been author, podcaster, and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and Green Beret Scott Mann. Again, feel free to call or text anything in that if you'd like to ask a question of retired Lieutenant Colonel Mann. We did get a text in, and the question is, Scott, how many Americans do you think remain stranded in Afghanistan, dead or alive?
Man, I don't know. I just don't know. I've kind of gotten away from the case management stuff. I do know that here's what I know. There are family members of Americans in Afghanistan who are like service members, family members, like moms, dads. And there are, green card holders and U.S. citizens still there who are stuck. I think they're going to get out. I really do. I think that my sense in talking to members of the administration, they get it. They know that there's within this broader immigration challenge, there are extenuating circumstances that need to be, addressed. And but to try to estimate like how many, I have no idea. And it would be wildly speculative and probably irresponsible of me to do so.
Gotcha. Another listener just texted in and said, do you think DEI and lower recruitment standards are part of the problem?
Here's what, I think that, what Secretary Hegseth is doing with the standards is spot on. I don't know if you saw, but just recently he announced that he's going to make, for example, the physical fitness standards for each MOS or, skill specialty the same for men and women. Like, that just to me is common sense. If you're going to have 11 people
agree.
in a squad, then 11 people should have the same standard. There shouldn't be a gender-specific standard. That makes no sense. That literally makes no sense for anybody that's ever been to combat. The biggest challenge, I think, right now, and I've actually said this to Secretary Hegseth, is I believe that the legacy recruits, the men and women who served, that are the sons, daughters, nieces, nephews of our global war on terror warfighters, are still wondering about the way Afghanistan ended and the way we ended that war as a nation, the way we turned the page on 20 years of service and sacrifice and loss as if it never even happened. And there has been no accountability. There has been no ownership of that. And the burden has been put squarely on the shoulders of these veterans to try to help their allies with no real formal recognition or acknowledgement, or more importantly, accountability from our government. Now, the Biden administration owns that, but now the Trump administration owns that in terms of recruiting and retention. And what I've said is the legacy force, these men and women who are the kids of our global war on terror veterans, they represent a big part of the military and an important part. They're the legacy of service, right? And if you want them in the game, I think our government, President Trump, Secretary Hegseth, they need to acknowledge those global war on terror veterans. They need to let them know that what they did mattered and the way that war ended was wrong, and that they are going to pursue accountability, and this will never happen again to their children. And then I think you'll see recruiting and retention make a turn.
Yeah, and Scott, we already are. We're seeing. In fact, I think the enlistment rate has absolutely gone through the roof since we have gone from the Biden administration to the Trump administration. And we know that the strength of any country, and I don't care who you are, but any free country is the strength and how strong your military is specifically, and I know that Pete Hegseth real well, and in fact, I think you might have even recently met with him, and I have zero doubt that you've shared your concerns with him as well. And by God's grace, we're going to see, and we are seeing a turn in that direction. But there's still a lot of questions. You're right. It is now owned by the new administration, the Trump administration, and they need to continue to support our military and strengthen them. Because we're only as strong as a nation as our military is.
And I would say to that, Bob, I would build on what you said. The nation is as strong as its DOD, and the contract that it honors with our veterans and their families, the social contract.
Yes.
And that's where I think there has been a wildly reckless violation of that social contract. And until that social contract, and by that I mean trust, is reestablished with the warfighters who gave us 20 years of combat voluntarily and their families, I think you're going to have a gaping hole in all of this, and it's not hard to fix. Even though it was the last administration that executed this, it is an institutional responsibility to restore it.
Yeah, no, amen to that. I know we only have about 5 minutes to go in the show, and I want to just make certain we get a few other things out. As I mentioned, you're also a playwright. We had a chance, Caroline, Zach, and I, Zach, of course, is our youngest son, to go and check out your play in Danville back in December, Elegy of a Green Beret. It was very powerful and very emotional. And I know you, as we talked about in the opening, you are a storyteller, but you tell it from a specific real life stand, and how has that affected? And especially, we're all concerned about the mental health tsunami that has hit our vets. And,
yeah.
What can we do, as fellow
Right.
Americans to help our veterans?
I think what most veterans really want more than anything else is to connect with their neighbors, to have their stories heard without judgment, and then to walk that path of reintegration with their neighbors in their community. And that's why I think the play Last Out, Elegy of a Green Beret that I wrote is really helpful. I think storytelling writ large, every veteran listening to this and first responder and family member, please know your story is incredible. And people need your story who are in dark places and lessons. So getting the stories out there at a community level, our nonprofit Task Force Pineapple, we do a lot of work with communities on storytelling, on how to use storytelling with your veterans, Vietnam era, World War II, because they have so much wisdom to share. And then finally, I'm excited. I'll say it here. I'm working on a one-person play right now called About Operation Pineapple Express that I'll be performing, and we'll have the world premiere in August. So make sure you stay tuned.
That is absolutely awesome. And especially, do you plan on doing any shows in Kentucky?
We do. We'll be touring.
Oh, boy.
We'll be putting the schedule out. So, again, scottmann.com or tfpineapple.org. You can stay abreast of it, and you're going to want to make sure you see that show. And I would get out to see Last Out as well. Whether you're a civilian, first responder, veteran, or family member, you need to see that play. It will absolutely change the way you think about yourself and the wars that we fight.
Looking ahead, what's one thing you hope America, and especially Kentucky, remembers from your warnings and your work, Scott?
I would say, in the words of Sebastian Younger, is most combat veterans are more than willing to die for their country, but they don't know how to live for it. And the reason that that's true is because it's hard to know how to live for a country that's tearing itself apart along every imaginable line, from race to religion to politics. And most of us combat veterans, we've seen what happens in those dark places when countries go to war with themselves over rigid ideology, and it does not end well. And we are on that path, and the best lesson we can learn is that the neighbor to your left and right is not your enemy. It's the churn and all of the disconnection, and we've got to find ways to bridge across that and come back together as Americans, because time is not on our side.
And I would say a big amen to that. I know at least one of my neighbors is a follower of a different party than I am, but I've got his back and he's got mine, and that's really what we have to come back to. That's
what makes our country great. That's
Yes.
what makes our country great. It's what our veterans fight for, is the diversity of thought. And if we can't have that in this country, then we are on the same glide path as all the others that have in the trash heap of history. And that starts with us at a community level. That's not for politicians to do. That's for you and me to do.
That's right. And very quickly, your podcast just started. Didn't have a chance to drill down on that. We have less than a minute, so just talk about that for a second.
It's rocking. It's called the Scott Mann Podcast. It's on YouTube. Check it out. Spotify. We're going to have some really cool names on there this summer. I think Gary Sinise is going to be joining me in July. So it's all about human connection and what we talked about here.
Fantastic. That's all the time we have today with Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann, soldier, author, and a voice crying out in the wilderness for our nation to wake up. Scott, thank you for your service and for joining us on Kentucky's Voice. Folks, pick up Scott's books and podcast. God bless you. We'll see you next time.
This is Kentuckiana's Voice, 970 WGTK Louisville.